Second test, series on the line, the teams are named. Welcome back to the channel. Give me your thoughts in the comments section. I'm going to go through the Lions team and mention some of the headlines from the Wallabies. What do you make of these two squads? How do you see it playing out on Saturday at the MCG here in Melbourne? Also, like the video and subscribe to the channel whilst you're at it as well. If you're enjoying the coverage of the tour, all the content from Australia, then I would absolutely love it if I earned your subscription. So I'm going to start off with the Lions. That's obviously going to be my focus. I've just got back from their press conference, Andy Farrell chatting about this team. The headlines are 3 changes. Andrew Porter starts instead of Ellis Genge. Ellis Genge is on the bench. Ollie Chessum is in the second row in place of Joe McCarthy, who's injured. And Bundee Aki starts at centre. Sione Tuipulotu not involved at all. Said he had a slight hamstring issue. I wonder whether it was the plan for Aki to start anyway, regardless of that, but I'll get into it. So welcome back, that's the team, give me your thoughts. The other thing here, and actually probably the newsiest bit of information to come out of the press conference, was whilst it's Hugh Jones at 13, Gary Ringrose was down to start. Ringrose was due to start, he picked up an injury in training today and actually ruled himself out, which is a amazing bit of self-sacrifice, really. I think it's a head injury, which is really not great after what we saw earlier on this tour, and that ruled him out of the first test. He went through his return to play, and then something's happened today, which means he's also had to rule himself out. But Andy Farrell said Ringrose came up to him after training and basically said, I can't play in the game, I've just picked up a knock, or whatever the case may be. But I do think it's absolutely the right thing, of course it is. I think for these guys, though, that are these professional, finely tuned athletes that are building up to Saturday, Gary Ringrose's debut for the Lions at the MCG, with debut in the test team, I mean, for the Lions at the MCG, the series on the line, like everyone wants to be involved in that. And Farrell said it would have been so easy for him to kind of not really mention it or try and play his way through or see I'll be all right tomorrow, but it's for the team. The best interest of the team is that he's not involved, and that's the decision that he's made. It's good that he's done that. His health is obviously far more important, but I just think it would be really easy for these guys in this situation to not necessarily think that. So I think that is a real shame for him, but a brilliant thing to see that he's actually done that. And I guess maybe as I've started on the centres, that's where we'll begin, in the middle of the team. So Bundee Aki comes in, there's no Tuipulotu. Hugh Jones starts but wouldn't have been starting, which suggests to me, I said in a video the other day that my gut instinct was Andy Farrell was going to go to the Irish pair. And I know some people get a bit frustrated by that. And I didn't think it was going to happen because Tuipulotu and Jones had necessarily done anything wrong. I just had this gut instinct that he would like to play that Irish pair, in particular Ringrose. And therefore I think Aki came in because it was Ringrose. I think we have got back to the place where it is, in Andy Farrell's mind, the Irish pair or the Scottish pair. I think the thing that Bundee Aki gives you, which we haven't seen necessarily from Tuipulotu on this tour, is a more traditional get yourself over the gain line 12. Tuipulotu can do that, but he's more of an all-round rugby player than Aki. But I still think that Andy Farrell wants his 12 just to get this team over the gain line. So I think that's why Aki came in. Ringrose has been playing brilliantly. Hugh Jones hasn't put a foot wrong either. I think he's been very, very good. And he gets another go here, which is, it's a pretty good replacement to have, isn't it? If you're not having Ringrose, you have Hugh Jones. But once again, the midfield for the Lions, some tweaks there. So go back to the front row. So Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan and Tadhg Furlong. Why Andrew Porter over Ellis Genge is probably one of the big questions here. I don't think this is anything to do with Ellis Genge's performances. I think you could easily make a case that he has been the best player for the Lions overall on this tour so far. There's a couple of names in that category, but he would be right up there. He's been excellent. So why is Genge on the bench? I think it comes down to wanting a bigger impact from the replacements than they got in the first test. That final 20 minutes, the Wallabies were on top. The Lions bench didn't make the kind of impression on the game that they would have wanted. It was actually a part of the game where you felt like they lost a bit of control. I think Ellis Genge being on the bench is because he is such a powerful carrier. He's been so dynamic and such good form on this tour that Farrell wants that impact in the second half of the game. And I think the same can kind of be said for Owen Farrell and Blair Kinghorn being on as well. I'll maybe get onto them in just a moment. But experience, quality on that bench, hoping that it will give the Lions a bigger impact. Dan Sheehan obviously continues to start at hooker and Tadhg Furlong as well at tight head prop. Into the second row, so Ollie Chessum comes in for Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy injured. You always thought it was going to be Chesham, that it would be a straight swap. James Ryan comes onto the bench, which I was interested in. I wondered whether the Lions, because they've got Itoje, Chesham and Byrne, if they were going to go for those three in the starting team, whether you would have gone with Jack Morgan and Ben Earl, and so go for two back rowers on your bench, because you have three second rows or three players in your starting team that can play second row, so would you feel you're covered? They've gone for James Ryan. I would imagine it was a bit of a toss-up between him and Scott Cummings, wasn't it? But James Ryan is the guy that gets the nod. And then the back row stays the same. Ty Byrne, Tom Curry were immense in the first test. And Jack Conan is your number 8. I guess Jack Morgan can play number 8, can't he? I guess if Conan does go down, then you're reshuffling your back, the back three of the scrum. Tom Curry could also play 8 potentially, so that's maybe something to keep an eye on. Gibson, Park and Russell, the halfbacks, that was always going to be the case, wasn't it? They're clearly the number 1 pair on the tour. I mentioned the centres with Aki and Jones, and an unchanged back three, James Lowe, Tommy Freeman, Hugo Keenan. Anyone surprised by that? I really like James Lowe, but we just haven't seen the best of him on the tour, have we? His kicking hasn't been quite as sharp. His finishing hasn't been anywhere near as good. But he still starts here. Tommy Freeman as well. I think Tommy Freeman's had a pretty good tour. It was a tough game for the back three, I thought, in the first test. None of them probably had their best matches. And then Hugo Keenan, you keep with him, maybe because Blair Kinghorn played 80 on the weekend. But I think it's great to have the Kinghorn option on the bench. Those I haven't mentioned, Kelleher and Stewart on the bench. James Ryan have said Mitchell goes again. Shame you didn't get any minutes for Alex Mitchell, by the way, on Tuesday, just so that he would have played in every single game. And Owen Farrell and Blair Kinghorn. So when we look at the bench in particular, you've got Aki starting, and we had Aki coming off the bench in the first test. But I think it's always been the thing with Owen Farrell's inclusion. So obviously Mitchell's your 9 cover. Farrell replacing Marcus Smith means you go from 10-15 cover to 10-12 cover, so you don't necessarily need a centre on your bench because Owen Farrell covers there. Tommy Freeman often plays 13 for Northampton, so covers that position. Then Kinghorn covers across the back three, plus if you were in real desperate measures, he could play 10 as well. So it just changes the dynamic of the backline replacements, and I think that's why Owen Farrell is named. I think he gives them that diversity, that experience coming off the bench. I think he has looked good on this tour. So I don't have any huge complaints about that, but I know it's a selection that might get a lot of people talking because it often does. So that's the Lions. Most of the changes due to injury, I think, with the exception of Porter and Genge, and I think it's about impact off the bench. Really strong team. They'll be looking to back up what they did last weekend, go 2-0 up in the series and win the series on Saturday, MCG, which isn't a sellout. We got told about a year ago, I think, from the Lions that it was going to be a sellout. They're hoping, I think, 85 to 90,000. It's about 100,000 seater, which, to be fair, would still be an unbelievable occasion, a brilliant, brilliant crowd. And even like the AFL Grand Final at the MCG will sell out, will be 100,000 plus. Even Boxing Day test matches in Ashes, well, I think in the Ashes it gets pretty close with sellout, but Boxing Day test matches and other big occasions, it's such a huge stadium. They don't always sell out. They've got a lot of members, so it depends if the members take up the tickets, things like that. Still going to be an amazing occasion. Is it an occasion where the Lions win the series, or is it an occasion where the Wallabies level things up? Well, here's what I'll say on the Wallabies. It is definitely a stronger team than we saw last week. The headlines of Rob Valentini and Will Skelton come into the pack. Immediately, they've got more power there. They've got more firepower. And they've gone for a 6-2 bench split. So I think a lot of what we've seen with this Wallabies selection is being able to combat the power the Lions are going to bring and the power that the Wallabies were pretty ineffective of dealing with, certainly in the first half in Brisbane. They got better in the second half. There were definitely green shoots there, but almost every carry the Lions had in the first half gained ground. They won a penalty turnover where Tom Curry absolutely levelled Slipper. Byrne won the turnover within the first couple of minutes of the game that just set the tone for the whole performance. The Lions went 3-0 up and never relinquished that lead. And I think a lot of what the Wallabies are trying to do here is combat the power. You've also got Gleeson on the bench, which is important. He was missing last week. It's clearly a better Wallabies team. Can they combat that power? Can they match it? And then I almost feel like psychologically, are they going to be in a better place maybe? It's not that they obviously weren't up for the game last weekend, but I think the Lions were so good and so physical that it just nullified them completely. And I think they have to get themselves into a position here where psychologically they just match them. They go to a pretty dark place. That can get you a long way in rugby. I feel like that's what the Wallabies need this weekend. Tom Liner is still the 12. You've still got the centres in Len Ikitau and Joseph Sualihi, who are brilliant players but are almost 2-13s playing in your centres. Is it going to be enough to beat the Lions? For the sake of the series, I hope so, because I think you kind of want a decider, don't you? I know the Lions winning a series is not something that happens often and is something that you celebrate when it does happen, and an opportunity to go 2-0 up is pretty special as well. I do feel for the sake of the series, I think it would be awesome if we see it levelled up. Is this a good enough Wallabies team to be able to do that? There's certainly more power in it. I think we'll see a closer game. I think we're going to see an Australia team that are better equipped to deal with the Lions. Can they level this series up? What do you think? What do you make of the team news as well? All the various talking points, anything I haven't touched upon, put it in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.